What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Eli, Brian, Neil, who else did I miss? Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Shut up,
morning.
Hey!
Hello.
I figured I'd get it out of the way now.
Yeah, get it out of the way. Shut up, Neil.
Excellent. So I'm going to apologise immediately and ask the live stream if they can let me know. If you're getting any screen flashing and tearing on the live stream, please let me know in the chat, because I'm pretty sure my computer's dying and I'm hoping that what I'm seeing isn't making it to the audience. If it's epilepsy-inducing for me, that's kind of okay. But if it's epilepsy-inducing for you, that's going to scare you away from my show. So I need to know if that's the case. If everything's all good, if you can just let me know in the chat, that'd be really appreciated. Hopefully everything's all well and no flashy flashes are coming through to you in the audience. Anyway, let's move away from admin. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
If the Earth was curved, we couldn't acquire elevation angles.
They still claim the horizon is geometric. They're still claiming this. Even though they're
claiming the horizon's physical obstruction capable of measurement. We debunked that in 2020.
Well, no, they're still claiming that there is a geometric horizon, but what blocks buildings and boats in the distance is a refracted horizon. They're still claiming that.
Who's they?
Oh, Rue, Hiff, every one of them.
Are claiming that there's a refracted horizon blocking boats. According to the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, there is a physical geometric limitation to our view, claimed to be geometric Earth curve edge obstructions. That's what it's calculated as. Now, Ruhif was amongst those who debated us, 5 years ago? About this very thing. And he himself claimed a physical limitation to our view based on the geometry and called it Earth curve. Meanwhile, we only have one horizon. And as stated, the horizon in their begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator is geometric. It's marked with an X, labelled horizon, and claimed to block boats and buildings. The fact that they now tell us that the horizon is in fact refracted simply means that it is no longer geometric by definition. If it's refracted, it is not geometric. And their claim is that the horizon's geometric and getting in the way. Refraction, geometry it is not.
Well, in celestial navigation, the zenith is directly above the observer, and it makes a perfect 90-degree angle with a point on the horizon, which is the horizon mirror on the sextant instrument itself. So for them to say boats are going over a curve destroys this 90.
Yes, 10th. That it goes past the black swan what we're at now.
Yeah, that's what they're having trouble dealing with. It's a thought experiment, this geometric horizon of theirs. Their subject matter expert, Andrew Thomas Young, gives two numbers for it. He gives the 1.2 number without atmosphere, and he gives a 1.32 number with atmosphere. So when they say refraction, all you have to do is look at his second number and say, okay, well, he put in what he thought was refraction or a good answer to it. And doggone Black Swan shows well over 10 miles. It's a thought experiment. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Any
but
evidence?
the whole
Oh, go on.
idea.
My bad. Go on, John.
I was going to say, yeah, but the whole idea of the Earth curve calculator, that the Earth is curving, would invalidate the celestial sphere model if it were true. So it's not true, because the celestial sphere model is based on our observation.
Correct.
Oh dear.
That reminds me, as it's a Friday and we're live, I don't normally mention the day, but I am actually going to release a video over the weekend that specifically details that. I've just forgotten what the hell I called it. Oh, Jackanory. So, again, another video that I put a fair bit of effort in editing will be released over the weekend at some point, either Saturday or Sunday. So, for those of you watching live, if you're watching this after the fact, it might already be Saturday or Sunday, but either way, Jackanory. It's called Jackanory Globe, and it's actually you and I, John, mostly, discussing Eratosthenes and Al-Biruni in terms of how they are now our hostile witnesses to demonstrate what we're discussing right now, the violation of the celestial sphere model by way of acquiring an elevation angle and then bending the line that you've just measured as straight.
Yeah,
Nathan,
that
are you
model,
manipulating time?
No.
that model is requires a flat plane. But it's to get any angle requires a flat plane, and that's the positive claim. And when ballers come in, the first thing they try to do is establish a flat plane by claiming a tangent. You know,
Well, you
argument's done.
John, you need to explain that, because people in chat, they're not getting why you say when you say that you needed a flat plane first to get the sphere model in the first place.
Well, do you mind if I ask Brian to explain that?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's the one that come up with the dual radii.
Yeah, well, it's the globe model needs to match what we see in the sky. So what they did is they took elevation angles to Polaris, and they then mathematically using basically the celestial sphere model, created a dual radii for a globe Earth. And that radii can never change at all, because if there's any changes whatsoever in that radii, it won't match what we see in the sky. That's where it comes from. So it's flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. It's where both radii comes from. Back engineered.
You got it, chat? Very easy.
Speaking of chat, please share the show. Smash that share button. Any evidence?
Well,
Go on, John. Go on.
Just,
And Brian, go ahead.
sorry, John. I think John got in there before me.
yeah, I was just going to say that if you look at the celestial sphere model, you can see the flat plane they're utilizing. You know, that's not in contention. So they don't have any point to argue on.
Yeah, I heard Neil in the past 2 days saying somebody said to him that they take angles from the center of the globe, right? And that's the celestial sphere model, basically. They're just they're turning the surface of the Earth into the sky, right, for angles, and taking these angles from the center. Now, besides the fact that they're using a horizontal plane to the center of the globe, what the guy did when he answered that question to you, Neil, I can't remember who it was, but you said it this week. He actually tried to trick you, because what he failed to mention was the original tangent plane that he needed to create the original angle in the first place from the surface of Earth, before he could even bring it down to the second horizontal plane at the center of the globe, which is actually just the celestial sphere model. So that's where they're at now, where they try to bring it straight to the center and argue at angles from the center, and completely ignore, deny, and avoid the original step, which is tangent plane. That's the first thing they need. Without that, it's all over.
Okay.
Talking about the dingleberry, that's not necessary.
Yeah, but the first step for everything has to start with the tangent plane. For everything they ever did, has to start with the tangent plane. Even refraction had to start with a tangent plane. Everything started with that. And that can be any size they need it to be.
Well, we got a problem there on their side then when they say everything's refracted. How'd they ever get that tangent plane?
Well, yeah, but geometrically, they need that. First things first, they need that before anything else. So they require a flat horizontal surface of any size necessary, whether it be 2 miles or 2,000 miles. They require it before they can go any further.
Cyrus is saying in chat to Sleeping Warrior, in that case, you can get angles outside of Euclidean geometry.
Can't. He doesn't understand what even spherical geometry is. He doesn't understand it. Spherical geometry can't exist without the use of Euclidean. Spherical geometry is Euclidean geometry, just used at the center of a sphere.
We move on.
Sure.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, we can't move on, pun intended, because there is none.
Well, there's the ring laser gyro, but that proves ether now, not Earth rotation. So, no.
That doesn't prove ether either.
It doesn't prove anything other than one laser beam goes around a circle a little bit longer than the other one. That's all it proves.
Why does that happen?
Oh, okay, sorry. Go on, whoever that was.
I asked why that happens.
Why, what happened?
The laser goes around the circle a little longer.
Because it has a slightly longer distance to travel.
Okay.
Were you here in the pre-show, Extremis?
No, I just got here about 10 minutes ago.
No, that's fair enough. So, in the pre-show, what we were discussing was... The reason you've asked that question is because presumably you feel that there may be some validity in this gizmo to offer some explanation for something?
No, I mean, it's something we see. I was wondering what the explanation was. I didn't say it was valid. I'm just curious what.
Isn't that the point of a hypothesis?
Okay, but we're explaining what happens within a man-made gizmo, though, aren't we?
We are, yes.
Okay, so in terms of what we cover here, physical and natural world, how valid do you feel that figuring out how a man-made gizmo does some man-made gizmo stuff, how valid is that to the physical and natural world that we experience, would you say?
I mean, it's comprised of light and electromagnetic radiation. That's part of the physical and natural world. We're manipulating it, obviously, but it's still part of the natural world in that it uses a laser. Light.
Yeah, but you're not studying light or laser light as a phenomena. So in an experiment, you have a naturally occurring phenomena that you want to know the cause of. So if you're going to say, okay, well, light is a phenomena, okay, but is this apparatus designed to figure out the cause of light? Just say no. No. So when you extrapolate out beyond the gizmo and what it's doing, the man-made gizmo, and the effect the man-made gizmo you're asking the question about is concerned, it doesn't actually in any way relate to the physical and natural world in terms of figuring out how that behaves and how that operates. It's just a man-made gizmo. Might have some natural elements in it, and man is natural, so they made it, right? No, it's still not a natural phenomena, so, I don't care. It's just a gizmo. Who cares why it does it? Same with gyros drifting. Your gyro drifts. All right. One of the principles of a gyro is that it doesn't drift. So you got shit gyro. No, what causes it? I don't care. Causes what? Your gyro to drift? That's a gyro drifting. No, it's actually Earth. No, it isn't. It's a gyro drifting. No, it's actually Ether. No, it isn't. It's just a gyro drifting. It shouldn't. One of the principles of a gyro is that it doesn't do that. You're saying it does? Well, you haven't got a very good gyro then, have you? Because it shouldn't be doing that. It should be fixed in its own space, in its own reference frame, just spinning. Shit happens around it, don't matter to it. It just carries on spinning. That's a gyroscope, right? Yours doesn't do that. Yeah, shit gyro. No, it doesn't do it because Earth turn / ether spin. No. What I'd need to validate that scientifically is to first observe Earth turn or ether spin, and then see if I can figure out the cause of that. That's dealing with the natural world we experience, rather than the man-made gizmos that we create and then start asking questions about how they work and how they operate.
That's right. You can't isolate it.
Gyros precess only due to not being spun up to the correct RPMs. That's the only times they precess. Whether it be within gyro compass or anything, they only precess when they're not spun up to the correct RPMs. That's when they precess. There's a lot of names out there, but sorry.
Go ahead.
You're kind of breaking up there.
Sorry, I was going to ask how you determine the correct RPM. How is that determined?
Sorry, because we're very fascinated in figuring out gyro technology on this show, aren't we? That's the main purpose of what we debate here, isn't it? Gyro technology? No, this isn't a technological-based debate. I just explained a minute ago. You're on the wrong forum. Yeah, you want to figure out how the technology of gyroscopes operates, and that's not a natural phenomenon. I mean, I really don't care. It's not what we deal with here. Second time.
Yeah. Well, look, my information comes from a naval captain, an Indian naval captain. That's where it comes from, and I think he said it was 650 RPMs a minute or something like that. Has to be spun up to the correct. Maybe it's more. I can't remember the exact amount, but it had to be spun up to the correct amount. Otherwise, it would precess. But it doesn't make any difference to what's going on out in the real world.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Isn't a gyroscope like technology?
Ring laser, maybe. The mechanical, maybe not so much.
Not so much. Where do you observe naturally occurring gyroscopes, Brian?
Well, I don't observe them in nature.
They're definitely not nature, then. Just man-made gizmos, regardless of if they're mechanical or not.
Yeah, they're only man-made things, but they're great items, but they're not connected to the natural world.
Well, they might exhibit properties that are useful in application in the natural world. Again, that's what technology is. But in terms of me figuring out how the world itself operates, yeah, that's physics. The physical. As opposed to technology, that's not what we deal with. We deal with the real world, how the real world is, and how it's flat.
Yeah, but shouldn't Earth's movement be obvious? You could tell if we're moving because we would feel it. It's simple, isn't it?
So I think the point was the same, because it's like we kind of red herringed away from it. I was hoping to hear what the guy had to say, as Nathan is basically saying, well, don't make the same mistake that globe earthers make when they attribute some faulty gyro setup as earth spin, as ether. It's the same mistake. Actually, you need a natural phenomena, and then you're trying to figure out what caused that. Looking at something happen in an apparatus is not that. And it's begging the question because you're looking at it to validate something that you already believe to be the case. So.
That's right. So you go, well, if I use this apparatus to beg the question of earth turn, and then insert as my Q statement in and affirming the consequent gyro spin, or the drift thereof, then I can beg the question quite effectively. And then someone else comes along and says, well, if I show that that doesn't happen within your affirming the consequent, i.e. if you say, if Earth turn, then gyro drift, therefore Earth turn, I can just show how you're affirming the consequence wrong. I show that if P, then Q, not Q, but because not P. Okay, so you're going to take apart and affirming the consequent, form a logical fallacy that's already invalid to begin with. Okay, so you're going to try and disprove gyro drift versus Earth spin, which hasn't been proven. It's a begging the question fallacy. Okay, so you haven't identified the fallacy, but you're going to go and spend thousands of pounds invalidating a logical fallacy. And when it's shown to be the case that the logical fallacy stands, if P, Earth turn, begging the question fallacy, then Q, gyro drift, and lo and behold, gyro drift, therefore, Earth turn, I know, I'll just reassign the initial begging the question fallacy. So not the fallacy of if Earth turn, then gyro spin, but if Ether turn, then gyro drift. Gyro drift, therefore Ether turn. No, both are just the exact same logical fallacy. You just affirmed the consequent in both instances. You just replaced it after you failed to undo the original logical fallacy you didn't identify.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I remember when you were explaining that to Roxanne. That's still my favorite.
Roxanne? When did I
Yeah, it was
explain
some
that to
interview
Roxanne?
Yeah, it was some interview. You were going over that whole thing with them. That's when I first heard it.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I remember having an interview with Roxanne. I didn't know we went through that. Fair enough.
Yep, you went through affirming the consequence, form logical fallacy, and this brilliant.
Either way, just substituting one begging the question fallacy of Earth turn that can't be validated or varied for Ether turn that can't be validated or varied either as an explanation for how a man-made gizmo behaves isn't science, it's pseudoscience. It's worse than pseudoscience because it's pseudoscience that's being claimed by globe earthers that's then taken on board by flatties in the vain hope they can undo that claim, which is a logical fallacy to begin with. And when it doesn't undo the logical fallacy, not that you needed to, it was a fallacy anyway, they then reinsert their own begging the question fallacy of ether spin. Oh, God.
Yeah, I actually think if I had to pick one, I would actually, if I had to pick one of them, right, if I had to pick one side, I actually would side with out rotation because it's actually more believable when you're talking about the ring laser drift or whatever than ether. It's actually, the ether claim is so bad concerning the ring laser gyroscope or interferometry that the out rotation is actually more plausible.
Okay, I see where you're going. What you're asserting is if Earth turns, then the consequence of that would be that the gyroscope, which is spinning in fixed space, would appear to drift. Correct, Brian?
Yeah.
And you would be sooner to accept that as the case if it was demonstrated to be the case. Correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Because we can see the sky move.
Just nod along. So, yeah, well, I'm not disagreeing with you accepting that if it was demonstrably true. However, that is a claim of Coriolis effect. If Earth turn, that's a non-inertial turning reference frame, then apparent deflection of gyroscope. That's inertial reference frame. So the gyro spins. Gyros don't drift. They just spin. Like pendulums don't drift. They just swing. Yeah, it doesn't drift. Just everyone in the audience on the same track. Gyroscopes are just spinning in one reference frame, not drifting. However, if you are part of an inertial reference, non-inertial reference frame, turning beneath a gyroscope, then from your vantage point, it can appear that the gyro drifts. Now, I can dilute that down so it's even easier to understand. You on a roundabout looking at a lamppost. You turn, lamppost looks like it moves. It doesn't, it's concreted into the ground, it's a not actual deflection. Well, likewise, you seeing the cage move around the gyro, if you're in an aeroplane, doesn't mean that the gyro's moving, it isn't. The plane's moving around the gyro. Now, you could look at the gyro, compass or whatever, on the plane, and go, oh, check it out. that ball in a bubble is moving. And the guy in the plane goes, no, we need to pay close attention to that because it actually means the plane's rolling. It's staying still and the plane's moving around it. It just looks like it's moving because we're on the plane that's rolling. Right? That's Coriolis if you want to detail it with gyroscopes. Something moves and then the thing you're observing looks like it moves. So gyroscope looks like it drifts at 15 degrees an hour because Earth would be turning underneath it in the plane. Again, that means we've got Coriolis effect then. That means we've got 2 reference frames then. That means that for that to occur, Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half because Earth's turning underneath as a non-inertial turning reference frame. In other words, we'd have to actually have Coriolis effect for that to be true. Okay, I'm sorry, Brian, that was a long rant.
Yeah, no, it's good. My point being is that if I had dropped my standard of evidence, right, like you were asked to yesterday, if I had dropped my standard of evidence, then the ring laser gyro, right, would then be more proof for me at that point that the Earth is rotating than Aether, because I can see the stars moving. So that to me could mean I'm actually moving. And the Coriolis effect is a real thing, even if my version of the Coriolis effect is only globiolis. You know, there's actually more solid, if you want to call it, pseudo evidence for Earth rotation, if I am to take that standard of evidence of the ring laser gyro, than there is for Aether.
Fair enough. It's the Tim Osmond standards of illogical fallacies better than nothing.
Yeah.
Well, how do you quantify rotation with outer radius value?
Any evidence of the Earth radius, R value?
Only
Can't
mathematically.
measure the horizon.
No, mathematically, that violates the celestial sphere model, Brian.
At best, what we've done is disprove the radius. So, thanks. Good morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate. Mathematically violates the celestial sphere model.
Yes.
How does it violate that?
The acquisition of the R value would take a curve to an angle measurement. Well, that's contradiction in terms. It violates the celestial sphere model. Not
The celestial
I don't know.
sphere is a flat
John,
plane.
get him, John.
Yeah, it's
No,
mathematical. It's not actual.
No, well, yeah, but it's still it's got to make sense. Otherwise, it's just gibberish, right? You're using a convention to convey an idea that's in terms of mathematics. Well, the celestial sphere model requires a flat plane. You can't assert a radius to that flat plane and it still be a flat plane.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the question is there any evidence of the R value? And I said only mathematically.
That's like the guy yesterday when he's saying, well, I can prove evidence of unicorns by Googling unicorns. You can show the existence that there is an R value in use or described, but we're literally describing and asking for an R value to the Earth we stand on. Not, is there an R value that you could describe to a globe model? No. Is Earth, the one beneath your feet, conducive with the idea of having a radius value? And the answer to that is no, it violates the celestial sphere model.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree.
You need a flat Earth for your globe model. For your R value, you need a flat Earth for that too. However, when you start asserting it, you're actually in violation of the original measurement that got you there. So you can't have a globe. I mean, it's not that we're debunking it or trying to show how it doesn't work. You can't have it, in literal terms. It violates the celestial sphere it's based on.
If you want to get an altitude to assert a geometric horizon, you're going to need a flat plane for that first, too.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
How would that work?
Hostile witness says without the balloon, there could be no pressure.
Right, conspiracy cats. Without the container, there can be no pressure. So how would it work, as you put it, Arwen? It wouldn't.
I just attempted to sneak a reversal of burden in there. You know, if we can't figure out how, then how would that work, Flat Earther? Tell us.
Yeah,
How would gas
glad you
pressure
said
work
it.
without a container?
Yeah, so yes, good illustration, but you first have to beg the question. So normally that process, just for Baldwin reference, future reference for Baldwin, before you get there, you've got to point to the sky and assume it is a vacuum anyway. So if we can't figure out how that would work, the would has got to be ascribed to my presupposition begging the question fallacy that the sky is a vacuum. So if the sky is a vacuum, well then how would you make that work with the gas not dispersing into my fundamentalist presupposition that I've just made by pointing at the sky and suggesting it's a vacuum in violation of natural law? Make sense, Arwen? You've got to point at the sky and say it's a vacuum first to do that.
Well, I was basically inferring it by the question in itself.
Well, if you completely ignore the physics fact that you need a container for pressure, temperature, and vacuum, then if you ignore that completely, then you can start making up a lot of nonsense.
But there's another route to do it, though, you know? I mean, if you simply deny the natural function of gas pressure and classify it as a liquid to ignore that part, then suddenly there is no more containment problem, right? But even within that structural train of thinking, I don't think a lot of globers are actually aware that that is what is happening within the model.
Well, you have to deny more than the container needed for pressure, temperature, and vacuum. You also need to deny that gas cycles are a real thing, because a gas cycle could never happen under their conditions.
Well, it would be a fluid cycle instead. But if it's a fluid and you can just think of it as a liquid because of that, then suddenly you can attribute a downward universal vector, and then there is no more containment problem because there wouldn't need to be a container.
Well, there wouldn't be a cycle, there'd be a process. The process would be, if possible, gas will be produced from the earth and then just immediately head off out into the vacuum. That would be the only process.
But that's if you don't ignore gas as a thing.
What, ignore the presupposition that gas has already developed gas pressure beyond what Brian refuted you with?
This seems to be premised on the fact of gas not exhibiting gas behaviour.
Yeah. If I ignore the second law of thermodynamics and standard gas law and assume that the sky is a vacuum, how would you explain why it's not dispersing into it? What the hell? Exactly, Adam. Let's just ignore how gas behaves.
Excuse me, we just wouldn't expect gas.
I'm not.
We wouldn't expect gas to act like gas. Why would you expect that?
No, I'm not telling you guys to do it. It's not like, oh, this is the new political stance. I'm just trying to clarify that is how I think the original model was put together. It wasn't a problem because they would simply reclassify gas as something where it would not be so egregious a necessity for a container to be there physically anymore within their model.
Well, I think this is the problem with entertaining or begging the question fallacy in the first place, because I mean, we point it out, but then we start talking about things that are relevant instead of, because I mean, talking about things that are relevant is fine, but it kind of deludes the point that it was a begging the question fallacy, therefore there's nothing to talk about if this is all you have. So now we say something that's relevant, they say something that's either is relevant or isn't relevant. They might even take on our claim while claiming that they never denied it. And it's all this conversation around what should simply be understood. Hey, that was a begging the question fallacy. This is why people keep doing it. Flat earthers included, everyone included. Well, yeah, a lot of people included. Okay, instead of just saying, you know what, this is begging the question. Yeah, but wait, no, it's begging the question. Can we talk about something else now? Is that all you had?
Yeah. Any evidence of where were we? Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics got there in the end?
The sun is actually a black hole. Just look at it.
I wasn't asking about the
Long
sun.
enough.
No, you can't. They can't formulate one because a hypothesis is an independent and dependent variable. An hypothesis test, then you have a control variable and a null hypothesis as part of the test. So, but your initial hypothesis is just an independent and dependent variable. They have dependent variables, but they can't ever go past that, because what's their independent variable going to be? They can never bring it to the point of ever testing anything. So they can only state a dependent variable. So they only ever have half a hypothesis. That's the best they'll ever do. Half a scientific hypothesis.
So no science.
I could attempt a really haphazard one that is actually about an independent variable, but it's still conjured within the medium, though. So
They're
the
firmly
sun,
consequent, though.
about
They'll
the sun,
say that
for
the
example.
sunrise and sunset is proof of it.
How about sun weight? Right? The sun is really big and it's really heavy, and that proves gravity, or is rather assumed. And yeah, the proof is that it's so strong it even keeps gas right next to it, right?
The sun does?
Yeah.
I thought the sun was gas, according to their fairy tale.
It is. And it doesn't expand in all directions
so
because
gas
its gravity is so powerful.
Except for in spectroscopy, where it's basically defined as a solid. Celestial spectroscopy.
Yeah, it's a solid gas.
Yeah, that checks out.
Absolutely not. That's rubberish.
It's a solid gas? What?
No,
Rubberish. That's
Yeah,
rubbish.
that's what they say. It's a solid gas.
but in celestial spectroscopy, it gives a constant. I'm forgetting the term now, but in celestial spectroscopy, the sun shows up basically as a solid.
Word of the day, rubberish.
Let's expand on that.
Expound or expand?
You mean the gas?
Either one, Neil, they're both a stretch.
Well, maybe the gas is expanding in all directions, but at the same time, it's also being pulled in by gravity because of the black hole right there in the sun that you get to see if you stare at it. So that the gas is trying to rush away from the sun with, the gas pressure expansion, but the gravity is just so powerful, just like light, it just keeps it trapped
How
in
can
a
it be
perpetual
pulled in?
attempt to
What's
rush away.
gravity?
How can it be pulled in by gravity when gravity's not a force?
I said, what's gravity?
Let's beg even another
Force,
question. What makes it the whole?
Well, maybe the space itself is literally accelerating towards the sun to counteract the gas pressure attempting to move away within the available volume.
Did you say maybe?
Maybe it's not
Maybe?
science.
I'm sorry, we're talking about the heliocentric sun, right?
Maybe? Is that how you determine things? Maybe?
Well, you didn't approve of the mass attracting mass force gravity. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a little space-time bend instead. And say, well, maybe the space is literally rushing towards the black hole center of the sun. And that's what preventing the gas from expanding in all directions and escaping.
Why do you say I didn't approve when it's their side that says it's not a force?
You brought it up.
As their clarification that gravity is not a force.
Right. So I put in an alternative explanation.
So the first one dies, your second one dies, you got a third?
What do you mean second one dies? You can't disprove that.
Go up space, time, fourth dimension time. Show me time in the box.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to prove it, but I just said you can't prove it.
There we go.
That's true. It's technically true. You can't disprove it. And I'm not going to give you any proof.
A cubic meter of time.
You know, like looking back on, like not to take away from what Arwen's doing because he's doing a great following, but some of the stuff I used to believe was just so utterly retarded. I mean, just so silly that when you hear it out loud, you cringe.
Yeah, especially in hindsight.
I just tried not to cringe and just enjoy the flexibility of the human mind instead.
Someone presenting something?
It's Tony.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
Can you guys see what I've got on screen? It's Paul Sinner from The Chase.
Funny, Tony. I had that on my screen, and it's been bugging me, that question, because it's so wrong a question.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
But regardless of the content of the question, right? This is full on like ball earth propaganda. It's the machine, the mechanism of government pushing brainwashing, right? Because what they tell us is that weight is mass times the acceleration due to gravity, right? Well, how would you actually do this measurement or this? You'd have to calculate, but you'd have to change the center of Earth for the direction for gravity, and you'd have to change that direction into some other direction to get down to be able to exhibit a force on a set of scales. Because as they tell us, it's always to the center of the Earth. So how would
your screen? Can't see the question.
That's why I said
you got your hangout.
Let me try it again. So it should be this one. It should see Paul Sinner from The Chase. Do you see?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is, what is the approximate weight of the Earth in kilograms? Okay. Now, they tell us that weight is mass times the acceleration due to gravity. Well, in their model, when you have a ball, which they tell us we live on, right? They tell us the center of gravity is the center of the sphere. If I make this bigger, and then, oops, no, we don't do that. We get the circle tool, and then we have, represents the Earth. In their model, right, you've got the center of gravity always going to the center of the sphere. That's meant to be center. It might not be perfect. Don't hate. So the only place that you could ever get a measurement for the weight would be in the center of the Earth. But the problem you've got is net forces are a thing on their model. So you've got the mass times the acceleration due to gravity in this direction, but you've got an equal and opposite mass times the acceleration due to gravity in the middle. So you'd actually have a net force of 0 newtons in the center of the Earth. So when they're doing this, if we were to apply, if this was a flat earther asking the question, they would get absolutely slaughtered for asking this question and then not being able to answer with a diagram of how weight is calculated. But if you do it their way, it becomes a net. It's an example of an F net equals 0 because the Earth would have no weight because there wouldn't be a force exerted in the center of the thing because there is an equal and opposite force all over.
Go back to that picture. That's it, right? So weight
just before
is
you
defined on the surface.
Sorry, Adam. I just shout out Uncle Ben. He says, "Phil, go spend some time with your loved ones while you still can." Thank you very much for the super chat, Uncle Ben. Really appreciate the support. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
Weight would be as described in that formula, but done on the surface because the definition of the weight is defined by the mass of the body underneath. So my answer would be, well, what would it weigh? It would depend where you weighed it. If you weighed it in space, it would weigh nothing, because there's nothing underneath it to generate a weight. If you weighed it on the sun, it'd weigh more than if you weighed it on Jupiter. Yeah. So you have to have a relative place to weigh this thing. And then, therefore, the weight is defined. In the case of what weight is on a ball Earth, it's defined by the ball Earth. Therefore, the Earth's weight would be defined by what body you're measuring the Earth on. So it'd have to be a bigger body. So Jupiter would weigh less than the sun, and so on.
Yeah, I wonder, like, they must ascribe a direction in space, because they always say that there is no directions in space. It's all 3D space is like there is no direction, so it's always relative to the human, right? Well, to weigh the Earth, the only way they could ever do it would be to calculate the weight of the Earth, right? But you can't calculate the weight of the Earth unless you can actually measure it, because you're actually calculating for something that isn't possible. What is the approximate weight of the Earth in kilograms? What a totally... It's a void question from the start. Now, as it happens, they both got the answer wrong, because you can pluck these numbers from anywhere. They could be any number you want, because it depends on who does the maths. And as we know, maths can be applied to anything. But ultimately, this is a totally void question, right? But it's totally brainwashing the people watching it.
It assumes, doesn't it, that part of that weight is made up of a molten iron core. That calculation.
Well, how are you going to weigh the entire
space.
thing? Like, how are you going to weigh the entire thing, supposedly, when weight is derived from it in itself?
That's what I said. You've got to take it to another larger body to enable to put it on scales on that body to generate what would be weight.
And on top of that, like
upside down.
Yeah,
you just need to turn the scale upside down. After all, there is no up or down in space. So if you turn the scale upside down, you should be able to weigh it.
No, you can't put it in space. If it goes into space, there is no weight.
Exactly. So shouldn't the answer be zero?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the answer be zero?
Well, the answer should be zero, or the question should be reformulated to mass. Then you could use your calculations, but then you'd obviously have the question of, well, what is mass? But what this shouldn't be using is the term weight in their paradigm. Yeah.
I just want to point out that whilst we're arguing about the merits of the question or the answer or how you come to the answer or what, we're actually ignoring the fact that this is total brainwashing propaganda from the mainstream media to make people think that the Earth's a little ball in space. So it's another example where it's like affirming the consequence. If you ignore the inconvenient bit at the beginning and then go on and wander off into Narnia about arguing how candles light up in snow or whatever, we're doing the exact same thing right now. We're legitimizing the question by arguing it within the context of the question, even though it's a void question from the start. It's just pure brainwashing, guys. Pure brainwashing.
Correct, Anthony.
But you're right. You can't weigh it because the weight is from itself. Weight is actually, see, the problem is that what weight actually is this the pressure on, like, there's actually a down here on Earth, but there is no down in space, like you guys say. There is no vector of motion, so that there is no weight.
What were you trying to say, Mr. Palmer? Go ahead.
Like you said, that you can weigh something on the Earth because it's the Earth itself and their paradigm that's pulling it down, but you can't weigh the Earth without the Earth. You need to be on something to weigh something. Like you said, a 100-pound guy weighs 100 pounds on Earth, but if he goes to the moon, he weighs 80 pounds.
It's measured flat anyway.
Wait a second. Who's gone to the moon and got weighed? Who has gotten weighed on the moon?
Yeah, we've just entered Narnia again.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't.
Well, I'm saying their paradigm doesn't allow you to weigh the Earth because the Earth would weigh something different depending if it was closer to the sun, further from the sun. It's all nonsense.
Well, we have to apply the meaning of the definition weight. Mass times the acceleration due to gravity. That is the definition for weight. Well, you can't even apply it. If you're trying to weigh the Earth, what are you going to get it to exert a force against? Imagine if you had Earth-sized scales, how are you going to get them to do that when there's no direction of gravity in space? It's impossible.
Yeah, I got one. I got to read this one. This is funny. You could weigh Earth by standing on scales while holding it, and then subtract your body weight. Simple.
Well, technically, the globe Earth would always be at 0 G because it would always be falling through the vacuum.
You've got to put it on something that to make the formula work. But we're not arguing it. I'm not supporting them. We're actually pointing out, Tony, I think, the ridiculousness of their question in their paradigm. So to me, it demonstrates that we understand their paradigm better than them, to the point that we can look at their question and say how malformed it is in their paradigm.
I reckon there's actually on the panel of the chase, because I see it every now and again. Every 2 or 3 episodes, you'll get one question that sticks out like a sore thumb. I reckon there's a flat earther on the panel of people that ask the questions, because every now and again you'll see something that says something like, which planet is, I don't know, has 6 moons or something like that. And I just think that is such an obtuse question, right? Because no one knows the planets, but it's such a question that only we would pick up on. And I'm thinking, I reckon there's a mole in there somewhere. He's asking weird questions that stick out a mile for me. It's brilliant to watch. I wait for them coming up each time.
Well, a question like that was raised on QI. So here in the UK, we have a show called Quite Interesting, hosted by Stephen Fry. And on one of the shows, he pointed out something called the half-life of facts. Slightly ambiguous when you hear what it actually means. So he pointed out that on one of the early shows, someone was asked how many moons we have. And somebody answered 1, and the alarm bells go off, and they're like, no, you silly idiot, it's 12. Now you fast forward to the current show that this example's being given in, and they give the example of something like 13,000, a totally different number. And the host, Stephen Fry, explains that over time, what you consider to be a fact has got a half-life to it. This is absurd. What they're actually saying is the pseudoscience bullshit nonsense that we feed you might turn out to be not true. And that period between we telling it you as complete bullshit and you finding out it's completely untrue, there's a half-life, there's a time period. You can measure it in terms of decay because it's nonsense and it's going to be found out eventually. So it's got half-life. They're facts, in quotes. The reality is they're never presenting you with anything. They're just giving you nonsense. You never qualified it whether it was a fact or not. And in the case of how many moons we have, or how many planets a certain moon has got, or how many moons a certain planet has got, it's like, so we're presupposing sky vacuums, we're presupposing orbital motion, we're presupposing physicality to lights in the sky, and then we're defining how many of what is going to be in all of those presuppositional orbits, and then you're going to ascribe a number to it, which you can later change arbitrarily if you choose to do so. It's like, totally meaningless. You're absolutely right, Anthony. It's one of those totally ambiguous questions that really has no meaning, and even if you gave the right answer, it would just mean that you matched with their wiki search for some pretender clown who's given it a number on that given day.
It is a joke.
Just out of interest, what was the pointless answer?
I can't remember, but they both got it wrong. So however big those numbers are, you're just pissing in the wind, aren't you? It could go anywhere.
Well, according to the toothpick that I tied to the string and let spin around a rock while it was at balance, the Earth weighs 6 septillion pounds.
It's good enough for me.
Bold. Take that. We'll go with answer C then, Tony.
It's like that. It's like that old story of the atmosphere would stop. What was it at the Kármán line? Like what, 62 miles up? And where is the atmosphere stop now? in the new story?
Oh, it goes beyond the moon now, doesn't
only
it?
391,000 miles away.
Yeah, beyond the moon.
Oh yeah.
So that's a half-life fact that it can be applied
That's a half-life fact right there.
Yeah.
Wonder when that's going to catch up.
Yeah, if they give an answer to, let's just say someone says the Earth weighs whatever, 500 trillion billion tons, whatever, and you say, no, it doesn't, right? Straight away they go, yeah, how do you prove it? Then what do you do? Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is a trick, because as soon as anyone gets involved in that level of nonsense, before you know it, you'll have a burden of proof reversed on you, and you're supposed to prove what weight the Earth is, or prove that they're wrong when they say that the Earth is such and such a weight. Total rubbish.
That's like my son. Prove I exist.
Give him a slap up the head, and if he yells, he exists.
I was just gonna say that's where you slap him across the head. Like, oh, you felt that?
If you are a victim of domestic violence, call 1-800-WIFE-BEATER.
If he's grown enough to ask a question like that, he's grown enough to catch slap from daddy.
Prove I exist. Oh, God.
I may have gotten away with that maybe 4 years ago, but they just tower over me now.
Oh, you don't want to get slapped back.
Show them the video.
I don't think it would affect them. Yeah, that's a good one.
Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
Yes, that's where he's taking it from.
Well, didn't he prove he existed by saying, prove I exist?
It's a contradictory statement. The fact that you're asking the question proves the question you're asking.
Exactly.
Yeah, if he didn't exist, you wouldn't be able to ask the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've been having a back and forth. I've been having a back and forth with McToon on Flatzoid's channel. Flatzoid's put up a community post about geometric calculations based on trig, angles, distances, positions of stars, suns, stuff like that. But he's used straight lines to it, and he's trying to get McToon to respond. And McToon's finally responded, and he's having a back and forth. And I simply asked him, McToon, can you explain to me why it is that you use Euclidean geometry in non-Euclidean space-time? And unless I quantify the difference between them, he doesn't want to answer. But the answer is a syntax error. You can't use Euclidean geometry in non-Euclidean space-time because they're incompatible. You need to use curved angle measuring devices, which don't exist, because actual angles, Euclidean ones, they're totally incompatible. And he won't answer the question. So by asking me to quantify it, he thinks that that's a suitable response to the syntax error that he's got of using incompatible geometry in his geometry. The guy's a complete fool.
Is he asking the difference between length, breadth, depth versus length, breadth, depth, and time? Is that what he's asking?
Well, I think he's asking me to quantify the difference between the two calculations. So and if I did do that, and if I could do that, he would then say, well, there's very little in it, so they're practically the same. But because as everybody...
Just so I'm clear on what he's asking you to do. I just want to get clear on what he's asking you to do. You're saying, and you already pointed that out, syntax error, they're incompatible. Yeah, I completely agree. But his response is to ask you to qualify, is it juxtapose or qualify or define the difference between Euclidean and non-Euclidean? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah.
They're completely different dimension. How are you supposed to juxtapose them when they're different dimensions? One, length, breadth, and depth. The other, length, breadth, depth, and conceptions of time, dimension that we don't exist in.
He doesn't think about that. Those? He's only interested in the quanta. He's not interested in the actual error. So when you say that to him, he just goes, show me the difference. I'm waiting for your differences. It's like, dude, you're missing the point.
Well, the answer is a fourth dimension in one of them that we don't exist in. That would be space-time.
No, that's not. He doesn't accept that. He thinks that's not.
He doesn't accept it. That's what it is. Do you mean he doesn't accept it? That's what it is.
I agree. He just doesn't understand it.
All right, so he's out there claiming gravity and asking you to define it, even though it's his premise and his claim, but he doesn't understand it in the first instance. How shocking. With that, I'll say if you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, joined as a member, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord panel for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
fucking day!
Yep.
It's the half-life of their memory, isn't it? They're like goldfish.
No, it's the half-life of the. What they do is they rinse and repeat it, like Nathan says. They do it because they need to go. They need to cycle it, because if they don't cycle it, they're then going to be held accountable for their lies, because they need to recycle it to distract from the previous time when they've been destroyed, because they don't want people knowing that they're lies. Of course,
what rinse and
FTF does
repeat
it all the
is,
time.
how rinse and repeat functions is, it's making lemonade from lemons. So what you've got is you're up against a rebuttal to your existing claim that at face values, let's say it's a baseless assertion. Now, when it's refuted,
Welcome to the after
Don.
show.
Welcome to the after show.
Yes, that's right.
Nathan Oakley.
Yes, thank you. So when you rinse and repeat after having a refutation to your claim, what actually happens is it becomes an incantation. It becomes a chant. So you're just repeating the claim again and again and again, self-affirming. And then it also serves to rumpus the rebuttal if you do it through the rebuttal when it comes as a repetition, etc., etc. So it means that out of your lemons, when your argument's defeated, you get to chant the same claim again and again and again. And that has the purpose of reaffirming the idea back in the person who's chanting it.
It's the after show. Where's all the Ethers? They're coming out. I know they are. Stay locked up.
Ether, huh?
Oh my God, Neil!
It's all about the ether.
Well,
what's that?
What are you going to make a claim, or what's going to happen?
Neil likes it.
This feels like.
What are you going to make a claim? What are you going to make a claim here? I just going to waste our time.
I state the truth.
I bet you
Neil,
Ether,
that doesn't mean you.
I give a few days before Neil goes, oh yeah, we all believe the ether. Yeah, Nathan Oakley said so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What you want to tell us?
Sorry, there's a claim. We had it.
Hang on.
Claim. We had it. Nathan doesn't believe what? It's not about belief. We're not dealing in beliefs here. Ether. What's that?
Yeah.
I didn't make a claim about ether right now.
You just said Nathan doesn't believe it. So, number one, we're not dealing in beliefs. Number two, you're going to chant straight through the middle of my repetition of the original refutation.
Right, because
you're going to get one chance. You're going to get one chance to converse with me normally. If every single time you chant through me, you get 3 strikes. That's 1. Yeah, I'm going to get to the end of this statement whether you like it or not. You've made a claim. Your claim was, I don't believe something. I've tried to refute it by pointing out, number 1, we don't deal in beliefs here. Number 2, the thing you're stating, outrageous, that I don't believe in, needs to be defined because it's part of your claim. That would be ether. You have claimed it, now you can damn well define it.
Oh, that's not even close to what I said. I said if Nathan Oakley says he believes in ether, I give it a day before Neil believes in it too.
So what's ether?
Who gives a shit? I didn't claim ether right now.
You're talking about what people do and don't believe in and what they're going to state after they've said they do or don't believe in it. So yes, you absolutely are, you complete moron.
Taking the piss out of Neil.
Yeah, that's
right now.
strike 2. So you just talk through what I've just stated, correct? Strike 2. One more, you don't take part in the conversation. Strike 2. You've just detailed...
Strike 1.
Yeah, is that strike 3? My second attempt going to be rumpus with strike 3? Shut the fuck up! You've just detailed what Neil will be doing after he declares allegiance to a belief I declare. And the allegiance in that belief would be in the thing you're claiming. That's ether. Third time. You're describing how people do and don't believe in it so you can define what we do or don't believe in. Outrageous that you should be doing so, but define it, please.
Okay, I'm not going there today.
Okay, then get the fuck up my show. Bye-bye, dickhead.
And just to answer his question, if it's validated and it's proven, I will believe it. Simple.
That's the thing, Neil. You don't have to believe something that's been validated and proven, because it is. It's
Correct.
scientifically validated.
You're right.
It's not a belief.
Beliefs are out of the picture.
Yep.
Yeah, there was two
We
or
don't
three
rely on
voices came in
Change it.
there.
I'll accept it.
1 second. There was 2 or 3 voices came in there at the start of the after show, and they basically just came in to troll. Now, one of them has kind of shut up. So where's the other 2? You've
One
got
was
something
virus.
to claim and
One was
something
virus.
to prove.
Just let me tell you. One was virus, just adding fuel to the fire, so you can discount virus. The other guy was Oblivion, I believe. I can't see. It's too small, like all the names.
Well, if they got something to prove, something to claim, then let's hear it.
I bet
Let's
you
see the
that
evidence.
Virus, I can guarantee Virus wants this argument because he needs something to hold up in false dichotomy with gravity to make it a legitimate argument.
Correct.
That's what he's wanting.
Don't keep my name out your mouth. Don't lie on me, bro.
We will. No worries.
We don't need any talk by talk virus.
What he said was true, though, Timo.
Just take him at his word. He's saying he's not going to do that. He's not going to interject, and he's not saying that. And I'll take him at his word. Fine. He's saying also keep my name out of your mouth. And I agree. Fine. No worries, Virus. Thank you for responding.
Why would we do that, Virus?
Oh my God.
What is he, Will Smith now? He's going to smack somebody?
Yeah, it's tough guy. It's Virus to come in.
No need. I'm agreeing with them. Hello.
Why would you do that, Nathan?
So it doesn't have to be a 5-minute conversation about what.
God, can I respond to Neil? Can I respond? Why would you do that on his behalf? Because you've made an assertion about what he's going to do, divined his thoughts, he's then corrected you, and then sternly said, don't do that again, and I agree with him, and I'm backing him. That's why. So can we now, after he said, can we drop me and not drag me into this shit about Aether? And I'm reading between the lines. I don't have to tell me that you didn't actually say that, Virus. Right? Yeah, just drop it. He doesn't want to get involved as far as I'm concerned at this point. If he pipes up, that will change.
All right, I'll make it more generalized what I said. A glow believer would enjoy this because the false dichotomy with gravity needs something to argue against.
Indeed they would. Perhaps that's why it's in our realm. Who knows?
I'd like to hear maybe Virus take on one of the Aether proponents and the 2 of them argue it out. Because Virus is a baller. They are going for Aether. He's going for out rotation. See what happens.
Brian, keep his name out your mouth.
Anthony, please.
I think he'd win. I think he would win.
I reckon he would.
Anthony, can you mute?
Sorry.
No, the only reason I just picked up on Virus saying that, saying keep his name out of your mouth, I said to John, keep his name out of your mouth. It's like, how do you refer to someone if you can't call them by their name? What's that about?
No, that's reasonable. He piped up, you addressed him, then he responded. It's all good.
Basically, if you're going to lie on me, just don't do it.
I agree. I've already backed you. Hopefully this will end.
That's so hypocritical. That's so hypocritical of Humo. You accuse us all of lying, and now you're moaning that we are supposedly lying about you. That is the biggest fucking lie ever.
No, he's
hold on. Lying about shit.
Hold on, I'm the one that said it, and he's right. I made a baseless generalization about him based on right. So Akumo's not wrong.
Yes, correct.
He's just wrong the way he responded. That's all. There was no need for that response.
No, he wasn't wrong in the way he responded. Given that I spent all day yesterday calling a guy a C word for putting words in my mouth. No, he didn't respond. I thought he was perfectly tame. That's perfectly acceptable. 5th time's a charm. Can we move on? I thought Oblivion was going to tell us about Aether.
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, was it not you? My bad.
No.
In the pre-show, Brian had mentioned that they define Aether as everything and nothing. And in the perfect world, by just asking, what is Aether, you would think a reasonable person would concede the point. But we're not dealing with reasonable people, it seems like, when it comes to this topic. And they're on our side, like on the flat earth side. Which
ain't on my
makes it
side.
I just want to point out that any conversation
Yeah, it is.
ether also apply for any conversation to do with gravity. They are synonyms. They are words that have the same meaning because both of them lack evidence to prove that they're true.
The scene in Men in Black where the Tommy Lee Jones character sits down with the Will Smith character, and part of this, although it's not going to be my focus, is him saying many years ago people used to believe that the Earth was flat. But the reason for the conversation is that Will Smith is under the misapprehension that most people are reasonable. And most people are not reasonable. That's, again, covered in the pre-show, although it's not necessarily attached to this show. Exactly that. People are people. They're not globers, unreasonable, reasonable. Most people are pretty much average in that regard. And most people are unreasonable and irrational, for the most part. Not as a general term, just in the specific circumstances that we find ourselves in with a paradigm change. Most people will behave in an irrational and illogical manner when confronted with a paradigm shift. That's just because they're people, though. It's not because they're not reaching any particular standard, or a glober, or a flat earther, or somebody that's been deceived. That's just people. The more I do the show, the more I realise that.
Yeah, people get duped.
Yep. And then they have pride, lack of humility, and then disdain and embarrassment.
Yeah, I think they kind of show.
You know how you fix.
Go on, Eli.
You fix that by identifying the fallacy of begging the question, and you stop yourself from doing that, or allowing people to do that when they're telling you something that you may then believe.
Well, like yesterday, for instance, the begging the question fallacy was identified right away, and I can't remember the man's name, but he went on for 12 hours in the after show, continually begging the question. I really don't know how you guys have the endurance to deal with these people.
Oh, it's useful, and it makes a great show. It's educational. So that show, 4 hours long, I've listened to all of it already. So yeah, it's members only at the moment, but it'll come out tonight for anybody else, just because I had a day off, and normally there's a 2-day gap. There's only going to be a 24-hour gap. But that'll be out on the after show. I thoroughly encourage you watch it, because it's useful to hear a chanting. I used to say Fundy, but I've just said our people are people, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. But Fundy, in the respect that he's got a fundamentalist viewpoint, chanting over and over again that, in that instance, you guys just disregard evidence because he's got a faith in ether. Almost.
Correct.
Right? But if you hear me going through it over and over again, each time getting more detailed of how what is presented is a fallacy, begging the question, and how his response that I should then define things is a reversal of the burden of proof, the more time that goes on, the more that it's been repeated to the audience. Do you follow where I'm going with this? Now,
yes, and that
obviously,
is, yes,
the tension as time progresses also goes up. Well, from a entertainment point of view, and I hate to say that it's incorporated in there for educational purposes, but it is. I know what my show is. So people are entertained by me getting pissed off, the guy trying to rumpus me, all of that periphery to the actual data. People love it. But while they're listening to that heated debate, the information's being repeated over and over again. And it's never becoming less logically consistent. It's becoming more pertinent through repetition. So that was an excellent show yesterday. I don't know if you noticed, when I rounded out the show, I gave extra thanks to you in the Discord server, meaning him, Mr. Khan and Sinclenser, and I sincerely mean it. If it wasn't for them, as much as I can overhead the pudding and get really dramatic about it, that's to keep the momentum going, so that as I'm repeating that exact fallacy and how it pulls apart the claim, the people watching will have that sink in. So yeah, thank you very much, Sinclenser. Doesn't change that he's a wanker, and I hate the fact that they do that in that way and use me personally to leverage their failure to prove their point. That's because you disregard evidence. What? How dare you? No, I do not. Oh, why are you taking it personally? I'm just saying that you disregard. I'm just disregarding all the principles you stand for on your show. every bit of integrity that you've ever built up in regards to your standards of evidence, you just disregard evidence. Why would you find that offensive, Nathan, was his question. You're like, oh my God.
And they couldn't provide one example of when, on this show, we just declined evidence brought to us.
Chocolate
Not
asked him
one
about,
example.
Chocolate asked him 5 times, what is an example of you actually seeing us disregarding evidence out of hand? And all that he kept doing, Sinclair, was referring to a hypothetical example that he'd tried to offer up. During his hypothetical example, I took his hypothetical example as read and played along, but also took it through the standards that we apply on a daily basis to his hypothetical example. Ergo, while he's trying to evidence something we've actually done, i.e. he'd have to provide an example where we did it, with a hypothetical instead, in lieu of, his hypothetical still didn't prove that we disregarded evidence out of hand, because we took that through the standards too. So even his hypothetical example didn't meet the criteria that he was putting to us, or me as a specific individual, of disregarding evidence. We don't do that here. Now, further to us not doing it here, it's something we pride ourselves on. You know, that's integral to all of us in terms of how we standardise what we do and why we do it. So to say that we don't do that, i.e. we just disregard evidence. Oh, what, you're coming into the show claiming a globe? Well, people would like to, on our opponent's side, say, oh, well, if you go into the flat earth debate and say you've got a globe, they'll just disregard what you say out of hand. Will we? Hell! I will clear the airwaves to make absolutely sure that the claim is heard clearly by the audience, so they can hear precisely how it's said, what's being claimed, and how it's being claimed. So that when they start rumpusing the living crap out of the rebuttal 15 times, they get to hear it repeated over and over again as the fundamentalist religious zealot who has heard his claim, or had his claim heard, chants through the responses. All of it's very educational, all of it's very useful, and if you want to look at it from a human nature point of view, there's no ascribing a subset of people, flat earthers, globe earthers, concavers, whatever, to that behaviour. That's just human nature.
What do you mean, Nathan? He was complimenting you.
Was he, bollocks? He was spinning what... he thinks I don't know those deviant tricks that narcissists use. Tell you in a shit sandwich how wonderful you are, whilst simultaneously spinning that positive assertion that our standards are very high and turning it into your standards disregard evidence. That's not those two things are in contrast with one another. They're not inclusive. They are mutually exclusive. The one doesn't follow the other. To say you've got very high standards and then say you disregard evidence are two contrary things. Having high standards because you assess and adjudicate evidence, not because you disregard it out of hand. That's low standards. Hand wave dismissal isn't high standard at all. Just spin, just to tell us that we're wrong because we're contrary to his current view of Aether. That's all it is. So attack the messenger, make the messenger seem like he doesn't accept evidence. Crap, no, we just pull apart your fallacy and you haven't got any evidence for Aether.
Well, from a listener's point of view, because I listened to the shows the past few days, I haven't been on for a while, and the only thing that really stands out is there's been everything else argued about, and every other thing that was possible to create a red herring out of, to avoid anyone actually showing or defining what the Aether was. Nobody has been able to prove its existence or define it in any way.
Again, the same applies with gravity. They do it on gravity too.
Yeah, but even gravity is more clear. Even gravity is more clear as a description. Sorry.
No, it's not.
More's the pity.
It's only clear as a description, but they never define it.
Yeah, but you can't define something that you can't. You can't define it if you can't see it. You can't harness it. You can't define it then.
Yes, you're agreeing with each other. Because, yes, that's right, Brian. But they definitely do, don't they? It's like you with Globiolus. If I say, well, no, they can't do that because that's not Coriolis, your first reply would be, yeah, but they definitely do apply Globiolus. And as Anthony's trying to point out to you, yeah, but they definitely do try and describe something that's yet to be defined.
Yeah, I mean, there's two descriptions. Obviously, there's the one pre-Einstein and the one post-Einstein, and they're both completely different. It just happens to have the word gravity in them.
Okay.
But
Perfect point. You're right. It's the defining the effect of it. There you go, Anthony. That's where you're butting heads, I feel. They're trying to define and describe an effect of something that is yet to be defined or observed. But they'll spend all day describing how it affects stuff, right, Anthony?
Yeah. It's the same with ether. They'll do it all day.
Yep, describing how the ether will affect stuff. You're like, hold on, what is it? When have you observed it? Don't tell me how it shows up in the magnetic fields of counter space. What the fuck are you talking about?
No, that's the point, isn't it? It's these effects that we see in the physical world that aren't attributed to ether or gravity. They're just natural phenomena like with your magnetic fields, but they'll take that and use that as evidence for this thing that you can't see and say, yeah, but this is why it's happening like that, because it needs the ether, it needs gravity for this to happen. But there's no evidence to gravity or ether, just to the physical world, that they then make that assumption. And then this is what we was hearing yesterday, particularly with ether, in their mind. Therefore, because light moves, it needs ether. And it's the simple fact that we see light verifies in their mind that the ether has to exist. Right. It's just this circular.
Well, it's affirming the consequence. So I think it was John that was first to point this out. So it's if Q, then P. No, if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. So if, what was the example in this one? Light and ether. If ether, then light movement. Light movement, therefore ether.
Right. But they can't vary the cause in order to actually confirm whether that's the case. And that's the problem every time.
Well, it's a begging the question fallacy as opposed to a phenomena. So you can say that the phenomena, if you want to reformulate or repackage that into some sort of scientific vernacular, but when you do so, you end up with the begging the question fallacy still in place. And what's the phenomena we're studying at step one? You don't even get that far. So they don't formulate it into a scientific context until everyone's begging the question along with them, that we've got an ether. Yep. And then we'll substitute cause and effect relationships with pseudoscience, man-made gizmos, and then describe an effect that's happening within that, and say that the cause is ether for that man-made phenomena. And so the process is complete.
Right. If you can never vary and manipulate the cause of what you claim is the cause, at least, of an effect, then how can you ever establish that it is, in fact, the cause of that effect?
Exactly. And when the effect that they're describing isn't the effect they're claiming, i.e., in this instance, light, as opposed to ether, if you formulate it scientifically, you're trying to establish the cause of light or electromagnetic fields. Yeah? That's not ether.
This is where we must tell them that it's mathematics is used in lieu of experiment or demonstration, because they can't manipulate the thing that they believe causes the thing that they believe that they're seeing. So they use mathematics to calculate it as though it's proof, and we point that out, and they just ignore it.
Speaking of cause and effect, Anthony and I had a recent discussion about buying a new graphics card, which I can't afford, and I've got an effect where my screen keeps tearing. Now, I don't know, I haven't checked if it's made its way through to the live show, and I obviously can't check until it's uploaded from the recording. But that's an effect, not a natural phenomena, just an effect I'm observing. I am assuming, because I've tried lots of other things to try and rectify it, that my graphics card's on the way out. How do I validate that, Anthony? Because I don't know how to validate if that's actually the cause, short of having a second graphics card, which I haven't.
Yeah, that's what you do to validate it. You order something off Amazon, you test it by putting it in, see does it still do the effect, and if it does still do the effect, return it to Amazon because it's not suitable for the job in which it was bought. They'll give you a refund, and then you can probably then go and buy a motherboard and processor instead.
Well, there are testing programs to specifically test every aspect of your graphics card.
That sounds much more better. Yes, Arwin. That doesn't involve potentially losing money or having money to give over to Amazon, which I don't either. Okay,
well, in that case...
Great, I'll speak to Arwin. Anthony's useless. We've always said it.
Are we sciencing computers?
No. Did you not hear? You've got to listen more closely. Did you not hear me say
I wasn't
this
listening.
is not a natural phenomena?
No, I didn't hear that.
He's applying cause and effect reasoning. He's not applying the scientific method.
Precisely. I've got an effect. It's a man-made effect. What's causing that effect? Something I've fucked up with, probably. Definitely man causing this.
See, that's why you don't come in halfway through a conversation.
But that's a really interesting statement to make, though. Not all cause and effect relationships are science.
No,
Isn't
absolutely
that
correct.
a good thing to keep in mind in general?
Science is very narrow. Science is physics. And physics is the study of the physical and natural world. That's science. So when you say I've got a cause and effect relationship that I want to figure out, well, that doesn't necessarily imply that you're observing the effect in nature. Now, that misunderstanding has been utilised in this specific instance to turn a man-made gizmo, comparable to my computer, into a natural phenomena. So by comparison, you've got gyro drift or interferometry, doesn't matter, whatever the gizmo that's being used to make a claim with. Now, I compare that, just because we've now got a bit of background, I've laid a bit of foundation, to my computer. So I say, I've got screen tearing, it's flashing. Now, I think the cause might be the graphics card. I can vary that which I assume causes the effect, the graphics card, or I can presuppose that it's ether, right? Because ether causes that effect. It permeates everything, does it not? The counter space is what's causing the effect in my gizmo. And counter space is going to be something that's absolutely ascribable to the entirety of the physical and natural world that we don't experience, because it's counter space, a dimension that we don't live in. Right? So we're going to ascribe this to basically everything and nothing all at once. But what am I actually trying to figure out the cause of? A man-made device and an error in technology. Not something that needs ascribing to the physical and natural world with a cause. But that's what's being happened with gyros and pendulums and Cavendish balls and what's the one we're talking about at the moment?
Ether.
Yep. Gizmos and gadgets, technology. And if you want to know why something in a piece of technology does something in the way it does it, you don't appeal to something that you haven't got any evidence of in nature, like ether. I would be foolish to ascribe my tearing screens to ether, wouldn't I? When you all go, well, it's just a computer. You know, it's garbage in, garbage out. You've obviously done something wrong at some stage, or it's knackered. There's not really many causes. You've just got to go through it systematically and eliminate what you think might be causing it. Okay, right. Well, but if I just decide that this man-made gizmo called a computer and the effect I'm observing in it is actually caused by the ether drift, does that seem absurd to you? Of course it does, because it's a computer. Well, why would it be any different if it's a laser interferometer or a ring laser gyro or a set of Cavendish balls? Why does that suddenly make it less absurd that you're trying to ascribe a worldwide based force to a man-made device, in my case a computer? Just as absurd. Not science, not establishing the cause, not ascribable to nature.
Oh, yeah. Well, now that you're on science, let me see if you can answer this question as asked to me. Why does figuring out the nature of our reality fall outside of the scientific method?
It doesn't. The nature of our reality is very specifically within the method of science. That's all that science is, Neil. I can't believe you just asked that. All science is a study of the physical and natural world, cause and effect. That's all it is.
No, the shape. The shape
isn't an effect.
The shape is geometric. It's a geometric issue, not a cause and effect issue.
I just read them as I get them. Don't attack me. I'm assuming he means the shape.
What is not, as QE says, not cause and effect.
Cause.
Can't hear you. You're roboting.
Eli. You roboting, Eli?
Sorry, I was going to say. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Is it Matt?
Yeah, you can't prove the cause of the shape.
A shape doesn't have a cause. Shape's a concrete noun.
Yes, sir. I said you
You're agreeing. I get it.
cannot prove the cause of the shape.
Yes, that's right. It's a nonsense statement.
So
the shape is
the
not
whole
an effect.
time they said science proves the ball, they didn't know what they were talking about.
No.
It's like the difference
What's
between
the
what
effect?
it's like saying what causes brown. Like what? What's the cause of brown? Well, brown's a colour. And what causes it? Well, no, that's not something. Nothing's happening. How can I ascribe a cause to it if it's not occurring? If you're saying why does the ground that you're standing on suddenly go from being green and grass-like to being intensely hot and dribbling towards you? Well, you know that's the kind of colour change that I can ascribe as being a phenomena, a volcano, but not just why is grass green. Well, even then, you're like, that could almost be massaged into a phenomenon. Just, why green? What caused it? What caused green? You're like, what? It's a concrete noun. What are you talking about? Just is. Tree. What caused it? Just, there's nothing happening to explain the cause of.
God.
Yeah,
is that
there's no
something
effect.
happening?
With technically, well, I'll say it again, as I said earlier about out rotation with the versus ether when it comes to the ring laser gyro thing. If I was to drop my standard of evidence, then technically gravity has far more going for it than ether, because at least it has, like, when pre-Einstein gravity force, at least it has apple falls gravity. Do you know what I mean?
Do apples always fall?
So yeah, but the thing about it is the point I'm making is that you actually can point an effect to someone to an effect. Say, there's the effect of the apple falling. That's cause of gravity. Now, it's never been the fact that the apple fell. There was no hypothesis test went into why the apple fell. It was ascribed to this thing, gravity, right? But the point is that at least there is something to show. With ether, okay, ether, what does ether cause? Where is the effect? And they can't define any singular, they can't define any singular thing, can they?
I don't agree.
It's
there,
all
Brian.
around you, man. It's everything. It's everything, man.
Hold on, Brian's just asked.
Yeah, that's
hold
the
on,
problem.
hold on. Brian's just asked what ether causes. Now, so you've described it in a cause and effect relationship that obviously open to the purview of science and scientific inquiry. So if you're saying what is independent variable ether causing dependent variable effect, okay, you're then saying, well, they're saying everything. Okay, well, you can take something out of that for sure and ascribe it. Let's say magnetism, just for the sake of this discussion. One of the everythings is going to be dependent variable magnetism, or electromagnetic fields, whatever, or the space in counter space. I don't care what it is. It's just a phenomena of sorts that we're going to slip in as the dependent variable. But then in your question, what is ether causing? Well, then the supposition of ether causes light in counter space on a blood smeared whatever. Yeah. Well, how do you qualify ether as an independent variable, the cause of an effect? What is an independent variable? Well, first and foremost, as I've said, it's the cause of your effect in an experiment or hypothesis. So, number one, it's your cause of the effect. Number two, it's got to be real. You've got to actually be able to.
Yeah, but that's.
Number three, vary and manipulate it. So when you say what will they say is the cause, the effect of ether? Well, if you're suggesting that it is a causal relationship and ether is that cause, it's got to be real and capable of being varied and manipulated by you, a researcher, to validate it causes anything. And it isn't real. What is it? We're not even defining it, let alone varying and manipulating it in physical terms as a researcher.
Sorry for cutting in the middle there, Nathan. Yeah,
that's right,
that's the point of the question. It's kind of a reverse psychology question, because if I say, what is ether causing? Show me the effect. a specific effect. And then they could state whatever, magnetism. And I go, okay, then, or anyone could go, okay, so your dependent variable is magnetic field. Your independent variable is ether. So where is your hypothesis test where you proved ether causes magnetic field? And that's where it all ends. Because you can't vary and manipulate something that you can't even prove the existence of. You can only point to a thing that you're calling an effect, right? Is a magnetic field an effect?
Not exactly.
Or is it a cause?
I was going to pick you up on that in the middle of it, but I intentionally didn't. No, but you could definitely massage in something that's occurring with the magnetic field to call that an effect. So, no, not strictly true, just a magnetic field. No, it's got to be doing something, so strictly not. But let's not concern ourselves with that, because I'm sure, push come to shove with a ether fundy, they would describe something actually occurring if you took them through it.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter what they choose. The point is that when it gets to the point of them choosing a specific effect that they can show me in the real world, a real world effect, then, okay, you have your dependent variable, your effect, and your independent variable, your presumed cause. That's your hypothesis. Now, let's get a hypothesis test. What are you going to end up with? How are you going to even do a test?
Well, when you say you won't even do a test, it's far easier to just turn that supposed cause, ether, doesn't exist, can't vary it, can't manipulate it, and the effect thereof, counter space in magnetic fields, and just turn that supposition, without a valid thing to vary, into a claimed description. So rather than, if ether, then magnetic fields, just say it with a slightly different tone, Brian. If ether, then magnetic fields. And then it just turns into a begging the question fallacy that's not been validated. Because if ether, then magnetic fields, Brian.
They have to, but the whole point of the question is they have to show you the effect. Show me the effect.
You're denying EM fields. You just don't know about electricity, Brian. That's what I got yesterday.
Yeah, I need to lower my standard of evidence because I'm looking for them to show me the actual effect. Because that's the crunch point. When they show me the actual effect, then they've got to go and show me how they proved that this effect, that they're calling an effect, is caused by this ether thing.
And they won't. They'll just beg the question of it.
Yeah, but see, that's where they die on the like. The point is that when I ask them one of them for an effect, they won't be able to really give me a specific. At least if I ask Virus for an effect due to the force of gravity, he can say apple falls from a tree. He has something specific. They have nothing. Even gravity, a force of gravity, is far closer to being proven than ether. And a force of gravity was thrown out the window in 1915 by Albert Einstein for a whole new description of gravity. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but even thrown out the window force of gravity.
Hold on, Brian. Go ahead, Boris. Go ahead, Boris.
No, I thought he was saying to stop interrupting you.
Was that you? Did I mistake you for Virus, Eli?
Yes, you did.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, my bad. I was just saying that. Dang, now what was I saying? They do have something though. I mean, it's the same thing as gravity. It's because it's the same begging the question fallacy. So when they're talking about, this formula, you can just swap that out for that formula. You know, there's that. Then they're attributing the downward acceleration to gravity, so they have that also. And then to prove that there's downward Well, to more validate that to the person who's listening, they'll bring up the fact that there's this current, this flow of energy that flows down. I'm not exactly sure. I wish they were here to explain it, but the bottom line is they have lots of different things that they point to that they attribute to Ether.
Eli, just say everything. Just say everything.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's giving enough rope out there to anybody who's in the Discord panel to say, yeah, you basically got it right. Yeah, the apple falls. It is going down. What's your problem? We have got a lot of evidence for gravity. That's what he's encouraging someone to say, aren't you, Eli?
Yeah, acceleration, weight, all
Weight
these
is downward
things
vector.
supposedly.
We're going to do this with
I thought he was talking about Ether.
Instead of enticing someone from Discord, it's just perked at Baldwin. We're going to do this, are we, Baldwin?
Is that a challenge?
Only if no one else from Discord comes forward. I would straight into character. Check it out.
I just went to a site on the subject, and I've got 3 things I posted in Master Me. So one says, the God field is the fabric of space. It is a subtle fluid, magnetic energy, which fills all space. It is intensified within and around matter, where its attractive nature produces the force of gravity. Second one, the legendary 5th element holds the key to the answer to one of today's top mysteries in the world of physics and cosmology. Scientists estimate that 84% of the matter in the universe is composed of an invisible dark matter, but they have no idea what it is. With a short venture into the world of metaphysics, you're about to find out the answer. And then another one from the same. Cosmologists know that...
How's the Star Trek song go?
Cosmologists know that it exists even though they can't see it. Hence the term dark matter, because of its gravitational effects on physical matter in the cosmos. So now it's gravity. Can't see it, but it's the same thing.
Now, dark matter has to exist, or their model is wrong. That's the point.
And what's dark matter?
So
it's the calculation thing they do in order to balance the equation when they apply Newtonian gravity to their heliocentric
I didn't ask how it was conceptually described, verbally or otherwise. I asked what it was, as in physical terms.
Oh, nothing physical. It's a mathematical fix.
Hold on. Just got the same answer from Adam. Don't tell me how it is just a conceptualization verbalized. Tell me how it describe how it exists in physicality.
It doesn't.
It exists in a fictional medium.
It doesn't.
Doesn't exist in physicality. Dark matter does not exist.
No.
Yeah, and even if it did, you wouldn't be able to measure it or see it or anything, right?
I just wanted to jump in after 10th Man read what he read to tell you guys that I was introduced to something called what is it called actually? It's called
bullshit.
Yes. How do you know? New Age bullshit generator. That's exactly what it's called.
What's it called?
So
I didn't hear what Anthony said. What did you say, Anthony?
Bullshit.
Oh, bullshit.
So it's literally called New Age bullshit generator. So you press the button, reionize electrons. Now, think of what 10th Man just read. Now I'm going to read this. Matter of fact, I can give this, if I was a politician, if I was an anti-flat earther, or anyone else who is lying, all I'd have to do is click this button and give them this answer. So tell me that this is much different than what 10th Man just said. Life force is the driver of nature. We exist, we believe, we are reborn. Awareness is a constant. Prophet, look within and recreate yourself. Today, science tells us that the essence of nature is rejuvenation. To embark on the myth is to become one with it. You and I are dreamers of the nexus. Only a traveler of the dream time may bring forth this paradigm shift of guidance. Yes, it's possible to disrupt the things that can erase us, but not without insight on our side. We can no longer afford to live with suffering. Our conversations with other mystics have led to flowering of super sublime consciousness. We're at a crossroads of space-time and stagnation. Reality has always been electrified with dreamers whose lives are baptized in knowledge.
Yeah.
Pair that with a short venture into the world of metaphysics. You're about to find out the answer. After that passage was entered into Master B by 10th, this is one remark from Paula. Hello, by the way. It says, in quotes, metaphysics? That's the only remark, the only response needed.
I just wanted to say consciousness is not a constant. So that's just wrong. No matter what you put around it, it's not a constant. Done. Wrong.
I use the colloquialism for the word metaphysics, also known as the word bullshit. They are both the same thing.
Arwen, the point was it's a new age bullshit meter. And that was the point.
We put space-time in there too. That's
and
hilarious.
Rejuvenation. So while I appreciate that life goes on, birth and rebirth, etc., rejuvenation? That sounds like a violation of entropy to me.
You don't understand what entropy is, Nathan.
No, rejuvenation, what that really means in practicality when they use it, is that things that are burdening you, making you seemingly grow older, can be detracted from your system, and that way you'll seem younger, right? Because you're taking better care of yourself.
How is that in any way?
Rejuvenation.
How is that any less of an entropy violation?
It isn't.
So you just padded out the entropy violation?
No. It accounts for entropy. It's just like, we get worse, we get older, but you can preemptively burden yourself with imaginary things, eat very unhealthy, then you will have symptoms like it's going wrong, like you're getting older, you can't concentrate as much. Well, if you then take really good care of yourself, you can effectively, to yourself, from your perspective, rejuvenate yourself by taking care of the problems that were the burden.
No.
Yeah. It's not physics.
It's also not true.
It is true.
Unburdening yourself with issues in your life and versus look up the definition of rejuvenate, and that doesn't meet it. Knocking barnacles off a ship isn't rejuvenation of the ship.
Why I did not give that as an example. It's not a universal thing. It's an action.
That's called
not a universal.
Rejuvenation
Rejuvenation's not a universal constant or anything like that.
But you gave it as an argument. The problem being your defining of the word rejuvenation. That's what's trying to be pointed out to you. So the example is flawed, just like yours. That's the point. It's a parallel.
Just to back the main point that Eli was making, this is new age hippie nonsense.
Yeah, I know exactly what I'm talking about when that subject comes on the work floor. So
you know your new age hippie nonsense, don't you, Owen?
Yeah, and I got it under control now, right? I'm not like the molten buildings guy, and you all know that. I got it under control, but I know what it is, and I know how it works. And when people say rejuvenation, it's a kind of a fuzzy terminology, and it's always meant for personal experience. Like, you can fix your life. You'll feel younger. Yeah, it's all perception, but it is something that actually does happen.
In that respect, that's like my barnacles off the boat example. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that in terms of how it was detailed, in terms of rejuvenation, when they're talking about the world and space-time, that's an entropy violation. You've just extracted it out into the example of physical rejuvenation of feeling better because you've knocked the barnacles off, metaphorically speaking.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I did. I did isolate it from the entire bullshit story. Yeah, because that made no sense. It had no coherence. So.
since we got Paula on, she was trying to share something before you ended the show yesterday concerning her studies on, I believe, the electrical and all this areas of magnets. Or, I can't remember, but Paula, can you finish that thought about shielding and all these things that you were trying to say?
Oh yeah, regarding the ether. Yeah, what I said was that when there's a reason when you have wires in a circuit that you have to shield them, because they make, when electricity flows, whatever that means, it makes a magnetic field around it. That's what you've heard of the right hand rule, that there's, it's flowing one direction, you get a certain rotation of magnetic field around it. And you can have all sorts of different magnetic fields that can interfere with each other. So that's why you have to shield them. So that basically the shield has crisscross wires, and what they do is make the magnetic field that forms around them cancel out. So it's like having a bunch of magnets, at different polarities, so that they don't align anymore. That takes away the magnetic field. If it were the ether that is being disturbed that makes something go a certain direction, then it would always be present. You wouldn't need a circuit. You wouldn't be able to stop it or shield it because it's everywhere. And so it doesn't explain anything, because you can turn it on and off. You can control magnetic fields. You can measure magnetic field strength. You can predict what magnetic fields are going to do. You can see them with iron filings, but you can't do any of that with ether. And ether, if it were everywhere and you could detect it somehow, you would have to verify that, yes, what I'm detecting is nothing but ether, whatever that is. And if it's just energy, well, of course, there's energy involved in everything. You can burn something and turn the energy into heat, which is then wasted, which is what they call in physics the eventual heat death of the universe, because heat is always a loss byproduct of work, defined by physics work, where something is accomplished, something moves or does something, and eventually the energy runs out to where you have this heat death. Well, if it's the ether that there's this giant energy field, then it too would have to weaken, and it wouldn't matter what you did in it. It's just, as long as something happens, the ether will get weaker and weaker. And so if it exists, you have to be able to measure that this weakening is happening. And it doesn't. I mean, how would anybody prove it? Because, yeah, because electricity doesn't even flow unless there's a path. Even lightning going through air looks for the path of least resistance, and it can meander all over the place looking for that. And yet, if it were ether, the whole sky would light up, not just at a bolt. It would be more like a sheet or a block. So ether has the very big burden of proof on it.
Right. And as you said, you have to isolate it, like prove that there's more ether there or less ether, or simply show me where the effects you attribute to ether actually no longer happen because there's no ether there, right? That would sort of be a start. But yeah, then you have to first know what it is, and not just, oh, look, this is the effect and I attribute it to ether. No, what is the ether? Then nullify it, make it go away, become less, and prove that is happening by something being affected by it changing. And then you have a lead.
Can I just ask Paula something? Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but from what you've just described, you would postulate that if there was such a thing that they presuppose, ether, and it was to sit in nature like everything else does, then there would have to be a decay, and that decay would be measurable. The fact that their presupposition has no decay to measure would ultimately make it a first law of thermodynamics violation.
Right. And it essentially makes it supernatural. If it doesn't decay, then it must not be of the natural realm, because, like you said, the laws of thermodynamics state that everything runs down. And so it would have to be supernatural, which basically they're calling it God.
Right. Enter counter space. This is all lining up. So it's
information.
It's layer upon layer upon layer of nonsense. One contradiction comes for your incorrect presuppositional assertion, so you layer on another layer of nonsense. Well, if it can't be permeating the physical realm and obey natural law, well, let's take it to the supernatural and call it counterspace.
Right, because you can't examine it. You can't isolate it. I can isolate a magnetic field, but I can't isolate something called ether. And there's no necessary antecedent that ether supplies. I mean, you don't have it as a necessary antecedent. The only reason, like we do with anything else that with pressure, gas pressure in a container, you have to have a container. It's in the gas laws. It's what we observe. You don't have pressure without a container. Therefore, there must be one. Even if we can't examine it ourselves, it has to be there. But there's no such equivalent for ether. Everything, every individual phenomenon, such as a magnetic field, is something we can control like an independent variable, and it doesn't extend everywhere at once. We know the limits of this field when we make it. So it's just a thought experiment, and not even really that with the counterspace thing. It's pure imagination trying to explain something that doesn't work in the math, just the way they do with dark matter, or what do they call it, quantum something or other, that is just
Quantum
a fancy
locking?
name for ether. Huh?
Quantum locking?
No.
Quantum tunneling?
No, I'm thinking of, well, there's a quantum something equivalent is basically ether or dark matter. They're all the same words for the same
Quantum
thing.
foam. Quantum foam.
Oh, God. Quantum foaming at the mouth.
So just,
Yeah,
just,
but
to,
it's
just
all
to,
imagination.
I try to sum up what Paul has just said. They're substituting what they believe incorrectly is antecedent consequent relationship, where they just make the question that the underlying requirement to have an electromagnetic field is the ether. Therefore, they're examining the electromagnetic field to see the evidence of the unevidenceable, if that is even a word. So, yeah, they're taking what isn't an antecedent consequent relationship. There is no antecedent consequent relationship between EM fields and ether. But if you assume that there is, you can then move forward in examining them. And every time there's a problem or contradiction that comes with your presupposition, you just add on another layer. So, like Paul has just pointed out, if you're looking for the God particle by smashing stuff together and looking for the effects in between to justify some presupposition and explain away dark matter, the same principles being applied when you smear a bit of blood on a piece of glass and then look in between EM fields and say that you're seeing into counterspace, because you've got an idea of non-visible counterspace existing in the supernatural, because you haven't got anything that you can demonstrate that doesn't violate natural law.
By the way, if I may, you can't really attribute ether to something supernatural either, because supernatural is technically provable, right? That's why it has its own category. So, I mean, you can prove supernatural things. Ether, however, is always ever presupposed, right? You have to still vary and manipulate the supernatural thing in order to establish that it is actual.
Correct, exactly. So you can vary and manipulate a causal attribution, i.e. you can turn something supernatural into an independent variable and have control over it. So in the case of information, a supernatural thing, you can control that, and it is causally ascribed in the double slit experiment. What is the cause in the double slit experiment? Knowledge of which path. Something that you can vary, something that you can control, something that is variable and manipulatable by you, the researcher. It's also real. Information, nobody's going to deny that that's a real thing.
It's effectively a substance.
Not non-physical, supernatural, still capable of being varied. But does that make ether comparable with information? Absolutely not.
Well, aren't they basically calling it the first cause?
Oh, a way of that terminology, first cause, might as well be exactly that. It's the, oh, well, this is a antecedent consequent relationship. You couldn't have all of these affect literally everything in the known existence because it's the first cause of everything.
Yeah, ether is the thing that holds the fabric of the universe together, guys. Without it, nothing can exist.
So we should congratulate the Boboverse over there with proving God.
Exactly.
Well, the thing about it is that they want to basically, they can never show us anything that is an effect of ether. They can just kind of say everything is ether, and make it. They're basically making it something divine. But then they claim that it was measured to do a 15-degree an hour drift. That's due to ether, isn't it? The 15-degree an hour drift that they said with interferometry.
That was the original claim to be null. It's an ether. Am I correct in calling it an ether drag test?
Ether drift?
Ether drag.
But they make a specific claim about that, and it involves 15-degree an hour drift. And if it's something that's divine or it's something that's everywhere and blah blah blah, how can you then just suddenly claim to make some kind of a measurement of it? Not that that is a measurement, but
I see what you're saying.
Claim that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's
a contradiction.
There's a circle between two heliocentric claims and the ether claim because of the origin in the sky with the movement of the stars. So you've got two parts ascribed in ether. One is 15 degrees an hour drift. That's ether drag, ether drift. Yeah? That is the same ascribed causal relationship to the ground turning for a globe earther, i.e. non-inertial turning reference frame, and the apparent movement of the stars. They're not really moving, just look like it because you're turning. Well, that's where the parallel comes in. But also, maybe by coincidence or design, who knows, you've got the downward vector that's also massaged into ether. Why? I don't know. But it's obviously both of them are parallel. 15 degrees drift and downward vector, both massaged into ether.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same logical problem as gravity. Is they're mistaking an observation for an explanation. All they can do is say something happens. They still don't know why. They still can't explain what causes it. How does the ether do this? How does it do anything? Why doesn't it always just make energy available all the time that you can just why do we need wires? It just raises more questions than it answers.
Well, you got there first, and I said it before you got here. So they're substituting a hypothesis for an explanation. So in this case, it's if ether, then star rotation, right? That's half a hypothesis if you want to ignore the null. It's the alternative hypothesis. If A, ether, then B, star rotation. Well, if you just paraphrase that with a slightly different intonation in my voice, well, if ether, then star rotation, Paula. All I've done is I've substituted the hypothesis yet to be validated with calling it an explanation now. So ether, well, star rotation because of ether. It's like, well, how have you validated that?
That checks out.
That's just a supposition at this point until you validate it and vary the presumed cause. And what is the presumed cause? Something that's incapable of manipulation. Well, let's call it supernatural then, because obviously there's stuff in science that's still utilising the supernatural and claiming to be able to vary it. So let's call ether supernatural. We'll still beg the question of it and call our yet-to-be-validated hypothesis an explanation when it isn't.
Well, real scientists were trying to find out
real
God.
ones, yeah, Neil.
The real ones,
scientists. Yeah, they were looking for the cause of God, weren't they, Neil? The real scientists.
Yep.
A cause of God.
That's what we were told yesterday by Sinclair.
How? What?
Check out today's show. It comes out in a few hours on the second channel.
It was actually the day before with the Cuddles guy. I think it was Cuddles saying the real scientist. I'm not sure.
No, it was Sinclair.
The downward acceleration thing is due. They claim that it's their dielectric acceleration claim is based on an increase in static charge. Is it as you rise up in the sky? But the problem with that is, besides all the nonsense that goes with it, there's claims of it being measured up way up into 60 plus miles. What measured this thing at 60 plus miles up when the highest high altitude weather balloon can go is around 30, between 30 and 36 or something? I think it's 30 or something is the max. So what measured it? It's a heliocentric claim in its origin, because heliocentrism has to claim massive, measurements way up into the sky. But no one ever got up there to measure it, and they can't send anything up there outside of a balloon to measure it.
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah.
I got a question for Paula when you guys
Just before you
guys get a
fine. Yes, you can in a second. You started the premise with their assertion that stuff goes down, though, didn't you, Brian?
But yeah, that's their full assertion. Yes, everything goes down.
That isn't the case, though, is it?
No, it's absolutely not the case.
So if you look at the apple again, just so we've got this fully covered, when we were talking earlier about, well, what's the phenomena? Well, the apple falls, and everyone scratches their head. Oh yeah, so we do have a downward bias then that they're gonna, as you've just described, explain with whatever incoherent dielectric acceleration. Well, is that actually the case? Because when that apple was being formed on the tree, number one, the tree came from the ground and moved up, but it's taking part in a process that creates the very air we breathe while it's doing it. And the gases that it produces, that's stuff. Now, they don't fall to the ground as they come out of the bush or the tree. So as it's giving off oxygen, is that oxygen falling down? Because it's still producing that in the same way it's producing the apple. It's producing gases as much as it's producing solids.
No, the gases are going in every direction.
So the original premise for the assertion that needs an explanation of the balloons is flawed in the first instance because it comes with an assertion that there's a downward vector to explain. So regardless if you're trying to explain it with incoherent dielectric acceleration or gravity, the original assertion's flawed. There is no downward bias.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, another thing as well is, I don't know if they claim it or not, but do they claim, I don't know, maybe
I'm really sorry to do this, Brian. Someone from Discord wanted to ask Paula something. Go ahead, whoever that was.
She's away for a minute. Paula is away for a minute.
She made an assertion that electricity, the flow of it has to have this pathway. So I was just curious as to how wireless power induction works within a vacuum.
But she's not here.
Like
She left a message.
Okay, yeah, maybe you guys can ask her later then.
Or what's your suggestion, that it should or shouldn't work in a vacuum?
Well, it does work in a vacuum, but I'm just curious if the flow, as she put it, of electricity requires a said pathway, and she said that it could induce through the air, then how would it be possible for this to happen within a vacuum where there isn't a medium required to have this this rate of induction?
When she said pathway, she actually said path of least resistance, and you're misconstruing a path with a pathway, as in just because something has a directionality of travel, like lightning from the sky to the ground, doesn't mean there's a physical path that it has to travel through, i.e. the air isn't necessarily the conduit. It's not the stone path that you'd walk on. It doesn't necessarily require that. She just said path of least resistance.
Okay, fair enough. But maybe you can restate the question later if she comes back or something and see what she has to say.
If I remember it, I'll repackage it as best as I can. How's that?
Thank you.
Go on, Neil.
just to get
Brian, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask the question. Maybe someone in Discord can answer. Is ether, the claim of ether, is that claim to permeate through water? Let's just say, so like the oceans and the lakes, or is it something that is purely above water level? What is the claim involving it there?
I'm going to answer that.
Yeah,
go on.
I guess the claim is that ether is everywhere terrestrially. The only place it isn't would be outer space, because that's not a divergent magnetic field or a terminal for discharge.
So it's in water then. Yes, the claim is that ether is in water.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere, everything. Yes.
It's yeah.
And what does it do in water? Does anyone know what it's supposed to do in water?
I mean, it's the thing that gives physicality to everything in existence, essentially. So it's like I called it, the underlying structure of all phenomena.
The cause of water and waves, Brian.
Well, is ether within the claim of ether? Isn't ether supposed to be the reason why light permeates, through the air and through everything? Is that not correct?
Did you say
medium
light?
for light to exist in? Yeah, is it not claimed to be the medium for light to exist in? Like in a vacuum, you still have light.
Light's of visible light is within ether. Yeah.
Visible light.
But isn't the claim that ether is supposed to be the medium that allows light to permeate? That without ether, the light would not be light. Like it wouldn't travel, it wouldn't go anywhere. Ether is the reason why light is everywhere or whatever. Is that not true?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have two components. You have the luminal velocity, and then you have the electrostatic capacitance of light. So if you look at like the Tesla coil or Chernikov radiation, this all exists at rates of induction, or what you would call speeds, that are much faster than C. And this is why Steinmetz said that C is the relationship between luminal velocity and electrostatic capacitance. All assumed velocity, in fact, is actually the rate of induction of the medium against the ether hysteresis. So contrary to the minds of most, in both, it's not fixed. And countless examples, like I just gave you, pertaining to the Tesla coil and Chernikov radiation.
Yeah, well, I'll get back to the C part in a second, but the way water, light will only permeate so far through water. The way that happens? The deeper the water, the less light will reach it. How does that work?
It's always proportional to the medium in which the disturbance is manifesting.
So it's the medium is the reason why light is not getting.
Yeah, the refractive index of an EMR circuit of power is proportional to its frequency.
But I thought ether was the medium.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. You see, if ether is the medium that light permeates, allows light to permeate through, and ether is heavier and in all the oceans, then there should be no reason why the light should not reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
I don't see that being possible.
Yeah, I don't see how that stacks up either. When you beg the question of ether, we haven't defined what it is, and the definition we have had is it's the underlying cause of absolutely everything always.
Exactly.
One second. The C was thrown in there. You said C. That would be the two-way speed of light. Yes?
Was that?
You used the term C, referring to the two-way speed of light. That's what C refers to,
referring to light's said speed in a vacuum.
Yeah, but how does that fit in with the ether claim?
So if something is potential energy of two said particles, as in Newman's theory, how are we to conceive of this energy existing in a point of space, coinciding with neither one particle nor the other? In fact, whenever energy is transmitted from one body to another in time, there must be a medium or substance in which the energy exists after it leaves one body before it reaches another. For energy, as Torselli remarked, it's the quintessence of so subtle a nature that it cannot be contained in any vessel except in the inmost substance of a thing. And that comes from James Clerk Maxwell's treatise on electricity and magnetism in Volume 2.
Yeah, but
it's
could you be more specific about how C?
It's inconceivable that innate matter should, without mediation of something else, which is not material, operate upon and affect another matter without mutual contact.
Yeah, that's Isaac Newton. Could you? Yeah, but you know C. What I asked you about. Sorry,
Why?
Anthony. 1 second, please. I'm going somewhere. You know C. That was referred to. How does C, which is the two-way speed of light claim, how does C connect in any way to the ether claim? How does C fit in with ether?
Because instantaneous action at a distance is actually, I think it's 20 times faster than C, as they've tested and discovered.
Stop. Hold on. Sorry, that's confused me. I was following along reasonably well until you said that. Something that is 20 times faster than instantaneous. That makes no sense.
No.
But C is not instantaneous.
C's not instantaneous, but this is.
But see, this is why I'm asking about C. But is C part of the ether claim, or does ether take C into account? Like, is it agreed upon within by those who believe in ether that C is correct, that the speed of light is correct, moves at a constant speed through a vacuum of at 671 million miles per hour. That's the miles per hour of C.
Was that a question?
Yeah, he's asking, is C, or the speed of light, conducive with ether belief?
Well, we don't believe that light has a speed. Speeds always assumes that to any being that X is moving from point A to point B, but light's not moving whatsoever. It's both impossible, and to assume as much breaks the law of conservation of energy and countless observations of luminal interactions. All assumed velocity is in fact actually the rate of induction of the medium against the ether hysteresis.
Yeah, but you mentioned C a couple of times earlier on. You mentioned C, and that's why I asked you about C, because you did bring the term C into what you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to explain to you that this rate of induction is instantaneous action at a distance without any sort of lag.
You've just done it again. I'm really sorry. If it's got a rate, it's not instantaneous.
Correct.
Yeah, and you did say that something. You did say it was 20 at one point. You said something was 20 times faster than C.
Yeah, that's what I said last time. This makes no sense.
But he wasn't stating the instantaneous at that point.
Well, I'm referring to like so-called scalar waves, which ironically contain no wave phenomena. Also, Tesla's death ray. These are all high
stop 1
voltage.
second. What was the first one? I didn't quite catch that.
Said scalar wave.
What's that?
This is instantaneous action at a distance. So it's essentially wireless DC transmission, and instead of cycles per unit of time, such as like what energy beams are measured in, voltage per second, the dielectric is the torsional attribute of energy, whereas magnetism is the release of that torsional energy, and therefore the mirage of its projection. So dielectric is the inverse of force, and the loss of the dielectric is force or magnetism. Voltage is the dielectric current pop magnetism. Dielectric has two modalities in loss as so deemed magnetism, and lastly as torsional or cyclical energy is carried in tandem with magnetism, so deemed electricity and light. So the dielectric is commonly referred to as a medium of dielectric inductance, and most dielectric mediums are clear and transparent. An electromagnetic works in simplex by terminating all dielectric inductance and transformation into that of magnetism, or in another manner of thought, by electricity losing its dielectric component.
Okay, my question was what wave? And then you said it is ether. Or instantaneous action at a distance. What wave? You gave it a title.
Scalar wave.
Yeah, what's that? You said your response was, that's instantaneous action at a distance.
Correct.
So the wave is how is a wave instantaneous action? This makes no sense either.
No. I said ironically it contains no wave function at all. It's just for whatever reason, I guess that was the name they gave it, but a little unintuitive.
Yeah.
But
okay, yeah, but words have meanings. So why is it being called a wave? What part of it is wave-like? If it's not a probability distribution, why is it being called a wave? What is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a transverse propagation instead of a longitudinal propagation, in which there's no lossiness of the electric component.
Hold on. Are we still talking about light? A transverse propagation? If it's propagating, how can it be instantaneous?
Because it's traveling through the underlying medium which everything's permeated from.
Traveling.
So this
hold on. Like, you're contradicting yourself. Literally, I listened to what you said to Brian. You said it doesn't travel. Very specifically, you said that. Now you're giving me how it... Stop. I'm summarising what you've said. You don't need to interrupt me. You very specifically said it does not have a journey. I listened. Now you're telling me about the journey through the medium. Those two things are in contrast and contradiction of one another. Do you understand?
I have to say that it doesn't make sense with the water claim.
Hold on, Brian. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
No, I'm talking about induction. I use the word just to try to help paint the picture in the minds of the listeners.
Yeah, but then when I asked you to qualify what you meant by wave, you told me about the propagation through a medium. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we're trying to
Shut
figure
up,
out
Arwin.
the nature of the words.
Hello? That's not you, Arwin. Hello? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
You're just not understanding, man.
Don't fucking ad hom me. And everybody in G+, right, I'm going to say this once. Put yourselves on mute. Right now. Thank you. I've just pointed out a contradiction in what you've said. I've listened closely. I haven't interrupted you. Now I've pointed out... Do you want me to do it again? Do you want me to point out the contradiction again?
No, I heard you, but again, I cleared that up. You just refusing to accept it.
No, you didn't. You went into technobabble for about 2 straight minutes. And then I brought you back with the very simple question of what wave, and you went on to detail it. The propagation through a medium, you said. No journey, you also said. That's a contradiction, I said. Then I said, hello, and there was a long stony silence, and you telling me that your diatribe of 2 minutes of technobabble was actually an explanation for this contradiction. No, it wasn't. Okay, so now I've overcome that crap that you've just spurted out. So are you going to explain this contradiction or not?
I have. You just kind of missed the point, I guess.
So, yes, no. I didn't miss any point. I summarised the fucking point. That's an ad hominem attack. Anybody in the panel not understand my summary of what he's just done and how it's a contradiction because he's telling me I just don't understand? I do understand. I've just summarised it twice. Don't ad hom me for the 3rd time. Just explain the contradiction.
You're getting too upset, man. Just someone else take the mic. I'm good.
Who the fuck do you think you are telling me I'm getting too upset? You've just took a load of my fucking time away from my family, my kids, my life, to tell me about something that specifically doesn't have a fucking journey. Now you're telling me how it traverses a medium. Don't tell me I don't understand, you stupid twat, with your stupid technobabble nonsense about ether that you're presupposing. You've presupposed it, we've allowed you to beg this stupid question. Now we've reached a point, while you've begged the question, that you're contradicting yourself. Now I want you to address that. Don't tell me I don't understand. You're wasting my time. Don't fuck me around. Tell me how this contradiction's squared. Do you get me? Tell me I'm upset, you stupid moron, with your doublespeak talking out of both sides of your mouth. Yeah, it does upset me. I am upset by you wasting our time with this contradictory nonsense. Do you understand? That's upsetting.
You got the glass?
Can you explain the contradiction between not having a journey and traversing a medium, as they are in stark contrast with one another?
We got 2 pieces of glass to do. Reglaze. Huh? I don't have the paperwork. I don't know.
You don't know how to explain this complete contradiction?
I think he's in walk.
Yeah, he's talking to somebody else.
He's talking to somebody else.
It's the third time in a row someone who's come here talking about ether has suddenly decided that they're actually at work, and then they talk about work stuff right in the middle. They've been totally focused on the conversation up until now. Suddenly there's work background noise. The other guy did it yesterday, and so did Sink Cleanser. So everybody coming to claim ether.
We don't sit around looking for handouts on the internet.
So is he ad homing me with telling me I'm looking for handouts because it's contradictions that I pointed out? Everyone else, shut up, please. Did you just ad hom me about me needing money to feed my family and making my living by doing YouTube?
Yeah, we actually...
I'm summarising your stupid position and ad hominem fallacy. That wasn't an invitation to you to talk through me. What I've done is I've taken your stupid, shit, misapprehension about what the fuck ether is, undefined nonsense, listened to your techno-babble in lieu of spending time with my family, that I feed by doing this, asking for handouts. I get supported for humiliating idiots who claim contradictory nonsense. That would be you, deny what? Don't attack me and my living when I point out a contradiction you hold. Giving you an opportunity to square that contradiction, not take the piss out of how I make a living. We're waiting for you to square the contradiction. No? Summary time, children.
Yeah.
Oh, now that I've decided that I'm going to label what I'm going to be doing and talking about, you're going to immediately open your mic and interrupt me at that point, are you? No worries. Give us your squaring of the contradiction of something that doesn't have a journey simultaneously traversing a medium. Go.
Yeah, I already explained all that, Nathan.
No, you fucking didn't. Okay, explain it again.
Okay. You got to look into instantaneous action at a distance.
You say it traverses a medium, so that completely contradicts that. No journey, instantaneous action at a distance. That's completely contrary to traversing a medium. So you're starting off with the contradiction.
Transverse propagation versus...
Well, that's not instantaneous action at a distance then, is it?
Yeah, I guess...
Yeah, so that's the contradiction you're not addressing. You're going to tell me that you've addressed it in this shit for the second time?
Yeah,
you haven't.
Have a lack of understanding.
Oh, so you're going to ad hominem me, you little prick? Because your stupid fundy faith has been exposed by me? You're going to start ad homining me, telling me I don't understand? No, I understand a contradiction when I see one.
What's the difference then?
Why are you asking me something?
Why
are you asking me something? I'm asking you to square your contradiction.
How much you understand?
So it's ad hom, non-stop rumpusing started. You notice how when you were talking with your techno-babble, nobody fucking interrupted you. You got unimpeached airwaves. Nobody talked through you. Now that I'm ripping apart your nonsense and pointing out the contradiction, you're continually interrupting and telling me that you've already explained it. And then when you go into explaining it, you start by saying that there's instantaneous action at a distance, also described by you as light having no journey. Well, then it's not traversing a medium with a rate. That's a contradiction.
I gave you several examples. You failed to look into it. I told you Chernikov radiation. There's also Tesla's death coil. death ray, whatever you want to call it. I
let's
mean,
take
these are
Tesla's
all
death
things
coil.
that
No worries.
exist that
No
you
worries.
can look
No
into,
worries.
but you refuse to.
I heard you.
You refuse to.
I heard you. Tesla's death ray. Explain to me how Tesla's death ray squares the problem of your description of light traversing a medium and simultaneously having no journey and being instantaneous. Explain how Tesla's death ray will square that circle, please.
Oh, you'd have to look into it.
I'd have to look into it and do it for you, would I, you fucking retard?
You get hung up.
Yeah, I'd have to do it for him. Because he can't fucking do it, he's a retard. Out here claiming ether like all the other retards that claim ether. You're all retards, and when we point out that you're retards, you tell me that I better go away and research it and prove it for you? So what, the same as the shit the guys yesterday pulled? Burden of proof reversal fallacy? I better go away and research this shit you can't overcome? No, fuckwit! You told me that you'd overcome it with Tesla's death ray, and when I ask you how, you tell me I'm going to do it for you? No! I will humiliate your stupid contradictory nonsense for an audience that now understands how contradictory it is, and how Tesla's death ray definitely doesn't overcome this, you stupid idiot! Hello? Deny what?
Yep. Putting on my tool bags right now. I actually got to do some work, Nathan.
Oh, fuck you, stupid retard. Get on with whatever demented shit someone's paid you to do. Obviously not use your brain, because you'd have fucked that up good and proper for them, wouldn't you, stupid moron? Yeah? Piss off, go and do your stupid work that you need to do. I'll sit here humiliating you for money. That's what I get paid to do. Point out contradictions from fuckwits with an ether belief. That's what I get paid to do. You piss off and do whatever menial task your retard brain allows. So, I'll give the conclusion, rumpus. The conclusion is, ether is a presupposition that has absolutely no physical evidence whatsoever and a load of contradictory technobabble to try to justify its existence when looking at phenomena that isn't ether.
I perceive that it was just nothing more than sophistry. For those that are not sure, sophistry is the use of clever but false arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. It's exactly what it sounds like he was doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's trying to dupe people.
Can I please address something?
Go ahead, Darwin.
Because I looked up the word propagation, and it doesn't necessarily mean like traveling in a physical sense, right? It's a bit dubious. So they may have chosen the word propagation specifically to avoid the suggestion of travel. There's still remnants of that in there, but it's not. Yeah, it's not specifically about moving. Just saying, I'm presenting it
until they specifically ascribe a medium for it to travel through. That would be ether. Then they've got it traveling through it, Arwin, like the guy just did.
I agree.
Yeah.
If you say with travel, but when you use the word propagation specifically, it kind of avoids the implication of the word travel. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Oh, well, happy days.
Yeah,
no
but
travel, no medium required to beg the question of then, Arwin. We don't need to assume any medium for this light to quote-unquote travel through then, do we?
You're correct.
So therefore, if no travel because propagation, weasel word, no medium needed anymore.
There was a couple of things that's why I asked him about the water. If ether is allowing light to propagate and ether is in everything, then there's no reason why light why the end of the bottom of the Mariana Trench is dark. Shouldn't be dark, should be bright, right? If the sun is out, it should be bright, right? But the thing about it is that he brought in the term C, and I asked him 2 or 3 times, where does C fit in? Because he brought it in, and he mentioned it, I think, 3 times within one whatever one babble he went on with, and he wouldn't go back to it. His explanations when I asked him about it, he kept on more technobabble, more sophistry, as Anthony correctly said. He didn't mention the term C in the 2 or 3 times when I asked him to show me where C fits in. And then he started claiming that it's instantaneous, while also talking about the speed of light in a vacuum, and then talking about, when I mentioned water, he talked about a medium, right, which is totally contradictory to his instantaneous claim. But Einstein was a supporter of the ether. Einstein was also a solid supporter of his own Einstein's convention, also known as the two-way speed of light, also known as C. So Einstein contradicts what he's saying. He contradicts what he's saying. He just rattles off a lot of kind of fancy terminology, knowing that it, like, if you'd have to write it down and start looking up each word and what word, I guarantee you, even within a sentence, he's contradicting himself. There's absolutely nothing there that you could call any kind of evidence for anything.
Well, we can do that also. And we have. Adam did it. We did it when we had a whole string of definitions, whole load of sophist bombardment on a slide. And we did. We just went through it each word by word. And yeah, as you say, Brian, each word contradicted the last when you actually pull apart the technobabble, sophistry, as Anthony Ball calls it. But anyway, I'm going to round out the show on that note. So with that, I'm going to say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hitting the PayPal link and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!